Hey everyone, Howie Fisher from Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. Today I'm going to be tying up a pretty simple articulated streamer pattern. I like to call this one the Mosaic Bunny Sculpin. Nothing too innovative about this pattern, just the materials that it's tied with. To get started, I'm going to be using an Ahrex hook. This is a newer hook to their lineup. This is the XO 750, XO standing for crossover. This is a universal stinger hook similar to the Gamakatsu B10S. For thread, I'm using Vivis Ultra Thread in 140 denier and olive. And on this, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my thread right behind the eye and lay down a thread base back to the bend of the hook. This hook for the trailer or the back end of the fly is a size 14. For the main material, I'm using rabbit Zonker strips in micro from Fulling Mill. This is one of their new materials. I'm using it in black barred olive. I'm going to go ahead and separate the hair a little bit on the back of the fly, wet my fingers to get that parted. I just want a little bit of this back section hanging off the end of the hook, as you can see here, about an inch or so. The nice thing about articulated flies is you have this back hook to really help prevent short strikes. So you want to keep that in mind and not get too much material hanging off the back end of the hook. That will help prevent more short strikes. The next material has really become a favorite material of mine. This is from Upavon. This is their Straggle Hackle in olive Mosaic. The reason that I really like this material is it's a perfect blend, in my opinion, of flash and natural looking material. It doesn't have natural material actually in it, but it's got a yarn integrated into it, which is a flat, natural looking material. So if you're familiar with a fly called a complex twist, or have done anything similar like that, or tied up any of Kelly Gallup's patterns, you often tie in two different materials for your flash and a saddle hackle or schlappen. But this Mosaic Straggle Hackle from Upavon is really nice because it combines both of those materials, a flashy material and a more natural looking material, into one material. So you only have to tie in and wrap forward one material and you've got your body here. So as you can see here, it's a super simple material to tie in, and just like that I've got my body material tied in on this back hook. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that the head of this fly or this front section is clean. I'm going to fold over this bunny rabbit that I've left hanging, and again split the hair and wrap my thread over to make sure that this is secure on the front of the hook. Once I've given it about 2 or 3 wraps, I'm going to go ahead and take some material and tie in front of it and snip off the excess. And then I'm just going to again clean up this head, give it a couple turn whip finish, seat my knot, and snip my thread off. And just like that, with this Mosaic Straggle Hackle, I've got the back end of this fly already done. I'm going to hit this with a little bit of Solarez Bone Dry, just to make sure that those thread wraps and that material is not going anywhere. Then I'll go ahead and hit it with my UV light real quick. Once I've done that, I'm going to just brush out this Straggle Hackle, make sure nothing got caught there. But you can see here again just how nice that Straggle Hackle really is and the profile of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove my back hook from the vise, and I'm going to put in this next hook. This is the front hook. Again, this is an XO 570 750 from Ahrex in size 10. So the back hook I'm using a 14 and the front hook I'm using a 10. This is one to help with the swimming action, but two also to allow for a little bit more material on this front hook, since I'm adding a pair of dumbbell eyes and the head on this hook. So again, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my thread right behind the hook eye. Lay down a nice base here for those dumbbell eyes to grab onto. If you could lay down a little bit of a base, it'll help them from spinning. I'm just using lead painted eyes here. Of course, use your eye of choice. To measure, I'm going to go an eye lengths back from the hook, before actually starting to tie that in. This is just a good measuring gauge. I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 cross wraps in each direction before spinning it over, because I want this fly to ride hook point down. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some super glue at this point, some Zap-A-Gap medium, before giving it a lot more wraps, a lot more cross wraps, wraps around the eyes to pull those thread wraps in, as you can see here. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie in over the dumbbell eyes on the edges, kind of like you're whipping two or three sticks together, if you've ever done that before. Again, taking thread wraps around the base of that to pull those thread wraps really tight together. Once that glue sets, those aren't really going anywhere, so that should give you a pretty firm base on those eyes to work from. At this point, I'm going to bring my thread all the way back to the bend of the hook. Again, I like to lay down a thread base to really make sure that all of the materials are having something good to grab onto the hook bend, especially this wire. It's better to go onto thread rather than straight steel so that it doesn't slip out. For this, for the intruder wire here, the connecting wire, I'm using Beadalon. This is a Kelly Gallup favorite. I've picked it up as well. Pretty cheap, easy to find at any craft store, and really strong. So here I'm going to thread my my wire through the eye of my fly, and then through the eye of the back hook, and then I'm going to slide this intruder bead on. This is a 3D bead from Hairline. You can pre-cut these strips or these sections of wire if you'd like, to make things a little bit more streamlined. If you'd like to tie a couple, just saves you a little bit of time. But I'm going to go ahead and line that eye up, or that bead up, just about where I want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a couple wraps and then really make sure that I've got this length and that this wire is sitting the right way. I like tying these wires onto the near side of the hook so I can see a little bit better of where they're going to lay. Here I'm using Renamed braid cutter scissors. These are super slick. They're actually traditionally made for conventional braid, but I've been using them for wire for intruders like this, or articulated streamers. Going to go ahead and add a little bit more super glue. Fold my wire over. This is super crucial. Either run your wire through the eye of the hook or double it back over on itself to make sure that it doesn't pull out and you've got even more retention. Really just going to clean this fly up now, make sure that the super glue is covered up, the wire is covered up, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't need to be super clean because it's just going to get covered up with materials, but make sure everything is good to go. If you need to, take a little piece of paper towel or thread or extra material, whatever it is, and just clean up some of that super glue. This extra step will save you really a lot of headache. So here I'm going to do the same thing with the rabbit strip, split the hair, and what I'm looking for here is to bridge the gap between the back of this front hook and the rabbit strip in the back. So I'm aiming to kind of create a seamless transition between the rabbit strip on the front hook and the rabbit strip on the front, or on the back hook. So once I get it where I want it, again, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple thread wraps over the hide and then take some thread wraps in front of, and then I'm going to fold it back again, just like this. And I'm going to reach for that Straggle Hackle again. Here I'm using 14 millimeter, so I've gone from 10 millimeter on the back side to make it smaller to 14 millimeter on the front side. If you only wanted to buy one of these materials, you could buy the 14 and do 14 for both the front and the back, or just use the 14 on the back and trim it down a little bit if you really want that taper. Truth be told, I'm not sure it totally makes a difference to the fish. Probably doesn't. But again, going to tie this material in, bring my thread all the way to the front, whip finish, bring my bobbin cradle around, and then I'm just going to go ahead and use my rotary function on my vise, spin this forward, And make sure I'm not trapping too many fibers as I do. Brush those fibers back some. And then I'm going to go ahead and, once I get to the eyes, I'm actually going to wrap around the eyes, kind of figure 8, top and bottom. Make sure I don't miss any sections. And then I am going to pull those fibers back again to make sure none are getting caught. And I'm going to go ahead and tie this off in front of the eyes on this fly. The reason for that being is I really only want to use one clump of head material here. I don't want it to be a super bulky fly because of the rabbit. Before pulling this rabbit over, I'm going to go ahead and brush it a little bit, make sure everything's where it needs to be. I'm going to fold that rabbit over again, split my hair to where I want it to be, wet it if you need to, and then go ahead and take a couple wraps over that hide to secure it. Again, this is the micro rabbit Zonker strips from Fulling Mill. This is one of their new products that they launched a couple months ago. Snip that off, really pull these fibers back, make sure I'm not getting any trapped in the hook of the eye, or the eye of the hook, sorry. And I like to clean this head up a little bit. It's not super crucial, but if you make the head of this a little cleaner, it's going to make finishing it easier. So here I'm using another new material from Fulling Mill. This is their Sculpin-Stacker dub, very similar to Senyo's Laser Dub or Fly Fish Foods Bruiser Blend. I'm going to go ahead and grab a clump, stack them or straighten them out here, tie that clump on top just with a couple wraps. Make sure it's where I want it. Right now is the opportunity. If you don't get this head right, now is the time to undo those wraps like you just saw me do. Make sure it's exactly where I want it to be. So again, I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 or 3 wraps. I'm going to wrap in front to make sure that tension is there so it doesn't slide around. And then I'm going to bring it back over the dubbing. I'm going to grab a second stack of this dubbing and again straighten out these fibers. And I'm going to do the same exact thing as the top of the fly. I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 or 3 wraps, make sure it is tight. And then I'm going to bring my thread in front of both clumps. This is probably the hardest part of the fly. If you've never done this before, it takes a little bit of finagling and trying to figure out how to use those extra fingers to really get this, this dubbing pushed back like this. Kind of got to use all the different fingers on your extra hand. So again, I'm going to finish this fly off with a whip finish of 3 or 4 turns before seating my knot. And I'm only going to do that one time before snipping my thread off because I'm going to coat the head of this with some more Solarez Bone Dry. The Solarez Bone Dry here on the head of this fly has really two uses. One is to keep the profile of the head a little bit cleaner. So as you can see here, I'm going to put some on while still holding this fly back. I'm going to push it forward a little bit because I want to get that nice rounded head. But it's also to keep your thread wraps from coming out, obviously, but also to keep some material out of the hook of the eye of the hook. So again, I'm going to hit the top and bottom. I find it easier to do it that way. Get a little bit more control on that profile. So last step here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some curved Renamed scissors and grab that bunch on the bottom and just cut it off. This is similar to how Kelly Gallup ties his Silk Kitty and some other of those flies, Articulated Monkey, so on and so forth. But just to make the bottom of that fly flat, and then also I want that Straggle hackle showing through a little bit more on the bottom. So here you have it again, the olive Mosaic bunny sculpin. Tie them up, fish them, let me know what you think. Thanks for checking in.